Hi everyone, I'm Erin Carswell, Foran's VP Exploration, and I'm happy today to bring you what is a really positive update on the Tesla zone. Not only have we finished the winter resource drilling, but we've also made a few interesting and exciting new findings along that journey. Before we get into that, please go press pause on this next slide and read our forward-looking information statement. All right, we're going to start the video as always at the scale of the Flin Flon Greenstone Belt, and those of you who follow us might notice that our claims, shown in blue, look a little different than they normally do. We've added about another 20,000 hectares there for a total of 160,000 hectares of claims, really in recognition that while we are building the McIlvenna Bay mine and putting a resource around Tesla, they're our ultimate priorities right now, the long-term ambition hasn't changed, and that is to unlock a district in this part of Saskatchewan. For the moment though now, we'll dive down into the McIlvenna Bay deposit area. Now this is satellite imagery from 2021, and I wanted to show this because this is pre-Tesla discovery. It's pre-environmental approvals to build the McIlvenna Bay mine, and I thought it was interesting just to step through a couple of years here. So we go to 2022, and you can see here that we've got the water processing ponds starting there for the advanced exploration decline into McIlvenna Bay. 2023, and you can start to see the construction camps and things being set up. 2024, and really that footprint is starting to be fleshed out. That was from summer last year. Now we don't yet have the satellite imagery from this year, but if we did, you'd see a little blue cube on this imagery, which is the heartbeat of the operation, and that is the mill that's going up as we speak. So lots of exciting stuff happening on site as always, and a big shout out to our crews who work tirelessly day and night getting this mine built. It's not easy, but we know that once it's built, like I mentioned, we have a district here to unlock. So it is really just the start of something long term, and we hope something big. The reason we're here doing this video today, though, is to talk about Tesla. So you can see here the surface projection of McIlvenna Bay at 1.9 kilometres long. Tesla is now 1.35 kilometres long. We've expanded it a little bit in the last resource program. Bridge, of course, sits in between, underneath the exploration camp. Now that was just to orient you so that you can see where we are when we drop underground. Now what we're showing here are black hole traces with copper equivalent assays, just to keep things simple. That's what we'll do for the rest of this video. We're showing all of the assay data received to date. You can see that the density is starting to get up there compared to McIlvenna Bay. We'll spin around to the other side because what I want to show you is a different way of looking at the drill density, which is this map of pierce points. So we call it a drilling heat map, but it's basically a little bullseye everywhere a drill hole pierces either McIlvenna Bay on the left or the Tesla main lens on the right. Now this is all the drilling that we had up until the end of 2024. What I'm going to do is go to the next slide and keep your eye on Tesla, and you can see just how many intersections we've added this last winter on the ice. We had the 8 drill rigs there turning right through to the end of March. We had 2 sitting on the footwall into April, but we have managed to really flesh out and get some great, I suppose, sampling spread across the central part of Tesla. That said, we obviously have lots of areas we need to come back to, and you can see those too. So we'll be doing some more drilling this summer and then hopefully finishing it all off in winter 2026. Anyway, before we leap into looking at some of the results from today's press release, I thought it was worth quickly stepping through how the interpretation of the Tesla lenses is coming along. So we're going to step in and have a look at them one by one. Here they're coloured by metal ratio. So the orange has a high copper to zinc ratio. So these are the ones that have typically copper rich compared to the others. The red, typically more zinc rich, although the mid lens, as I'll show you, has quite a bit of copper in it as well. And then the purple that you can see there is the gold lens that we started to put together last year. So super quickly, let's just step through these. We start with the upper copper 1 lens, which sits right on top of the main lens. It's not present everywhere. It's typically kind of between 5 and 10 metres thick, but can contain some nice copper grades. We step down into the main lens. This one is ubiquitous. Nearly every single drill hole hits it. It includes the massive sulfide breccias that we get with the sphalerite matrix, so very zinc rich, can be relatively copper rich as well though. Directly beneath that, and these are all adjoining, mind you, so they do typically form continuous mineralization. And then we go into the copper 2 lens, and that's roughly the equivalent of the copper stockwork zone at McIlvenna Bay. Now it doesn't fully go to depth. I'm just going to show you the bottom end of the copper 2 lens here. We've got enough drilling now to know that it doesn't go the full way down dip as the main lens does. That's about the lower edge of it there, but it does extend further up dip more than the main lens. So there's a little bit of a spatial offset between the two of them. Now, directly underneath that, and the reason I wanted to show this is because we're talking about it a bit today, is the mid-lens. So that's this funny looking little guy here. Now, this is starting to shape up a lot better now that we have extra drilling from this year. Previously, we had hole TS2310 into it, which was one of our best, thickest copper intersections ever. We've since had hole 37 wedge 1, which we'll look at today as well, shaping up to be a potentially valuable addition of tonnage potential in a future mining scenario. So really important to get some accurate controls on this lens. Now, this is what we'll be talking about a bit today, and these are the lower lenses. Interestingly, we had previously almost written these off. These were skinny in their up dip component or their northwestern end. They had decent zinc grade. They had gold zone sitting on top hosted in a gabbro. They weren't our target for the resource program. I mean, we have a finite period on the ice and we wanted to dedicate that to the Tesla main lenses. However, we've almost accidentally figured out this year that they might be more important than we thought. Now I'm just angling down so that I can grab my pencil here and circle in blue an intersection that we're going to look at shortly, and another one over here that are changing our mind about what we think the lower lenses could be. Finally, just to finish off the little lens step through, we now have the bridge lens modelled as well in between McIlvenna Bay and Tesla. But we will jump into looking at the holes released in today's press release, and we're going to focus mostly on what's happening in this zone through here. So we'll swing around to section view and start off with looking at 35 wedge 2 and 36 wedge 3. Now, as I mentioned, the lower lenses are something that has really caught our attention. And one of the dark horse holes of this program was hole 36 wedge 3 and an intersection that I'm highlighting here in blue. And we'll look at this on a geological section that will make more sense to you on this next slide. So let me step through this cross section because this is important. So we have 3 new holes here, 35 wedge 2, which I'm going to again highlight just to get your bearings. Really nice thick intersection of the main lens and the copper 2 lens there. You can read the assays off the screen, but combined total of about 54 metres of mineralisation there, which is a lot thicker than we see in other parts of Tesla, of course, so really nice to see. We step down there to hole TS2536. Now, again, we got a nice main lens intersection that I'm highlighting in blue, and then we went down and hit what we have now interpreted as the mid lens. It does tend to hover around the lower Tesla fault. There's possibly some control there, and they can run really high grades. Like I said, though, the really significant hole of the program is the deepest one we drilled, the entire program, is 36 wedge 3. Now, this hole we expected to hit the Tesla main lens around about where I put that blue X on the screen. What happened was we hit it at a much shallower depth than we anticipated. But because we'd already drilled 2536 and hit the mid lens, we thought, you know what, we're just going to keep this hole going anyway, and we'll see what we hit. We may get down to that mid lens as well. And what actually happened is we went through the lower Tesla fault and popped out into a beautiful intersection of what we now think are the lower lenses, but much thicker than usual and higher grade than usual as well. So in total, that interval there was a 43.6 metre intersection. It was split up into a 28 metre massive sulphide, running 8% zinc and 0.5% copper. Nice gold in there as well. And that was followed by a more gold-rich zone, nearly 11 metres, running about 1.24 grams of gold and nearly 90 grams silver, with a little bit of zinc and copper as well. And finally into another smaller massive sulphide under that, running 14% zinc. So the metal ratios and the gold are very similar to the lower lenses everywhere else, but the intensity of the mineralization and the thickness has changed. So this is really interesting to us. So what we decided to do was to go back and hire a borehole EM crew who lowered a probe down the 36 wedge 3 hole and lit up an EM survey from the bottom of that hole. And I'm going to show you next. We'll turn off the lower lens so you can see the plate properly. And this was the result. So that survey did light up a large borehole EM plate. So that is showing the extension of conductive sulphide material out in the same plane as the lower lenses further up dip. So that's really significant. If I spin it around though, you can really see how robust this plate is. And furthermore, it actually connects across here. And again, I'll grab my pen, circle this intersection at the northwestern end of Tesla. It connects up with hole TS2424 wedge 1. Now, this hole had what we called an orphan intersection. So higher up in the hole, again, we hit the main lens. It was, you know, a normal 12-meter thickness or something like that, higher up. And then it had this thick intersection that we'd never been able to hang together with anything else. We kind of figured we'd come back and drill some more holes around it and try and figure it out in the future. But what we now think is that it links up to the intersection in 36 wedge 3. You can see those similar thicknesses as well. And there is 400 meters of open space between those. So this is a huge target for us to open up. Not only that, but the EM plate indicates a significant down dip potential as well, which I'm drawing on with the arrows. And in fact, the next slide will do that for me. So you can see we're looking at some pretty important expansion potential here for Tesla, particularly if we can maintain the thicknesses and the grades and the gold that we're seeing in those lower lenses. Now, stepping back out to a section view of Tesla, and we'll move on to have a look at the mid lens, which again is this guy in here, by stepping through a series of sections. We're going to start with the same section we just looked at and then move to the northwest so you can see how the lenses are changing. So this is the same section that we were just looking at with 36 wedge 3. But now I would like you to keep your eye on the mid lens and the lower lens and how they change as we move to the northwest. All right, so stepping to the northwest a little bit. And here we have hole 2535 wedge 1, which was released in the previous press release, and TS 2536 wedge 2. Now, these are significant for a couple of reasons. First of all, TS 2535 wedge 1 hit a really nice, again, quite thick interval of the main lens. There was a little bit of felsic volcanic material in between before we hit the copper 2 lens. That is roughly where we would expect that copper 2 lens to be petering out down dip. So it's probably not surprising that it was anastomosing a little bit. And then TS 2536, on the other hand, hit a really nice massive sulfide interval before going into the mid lenses, which sit on the lower Tesla fault, and then going down into the lower lenses. So we hit 1, 2, 3 in that lower hole. If you have a look at the assays on the left, the lower lens is particularly gold rich again. So again, we're seeing that overlap of the gold zone with those lower lenses. It's a nice thickness. It's running again, relatively high grade zinc. So all of this is so far starting to make a fair bit of sense. So this new deeper drilling is really starting to allow these lenses to hold together better. Stepping to the northwest again, and these weren't holes from today's release. These were from 37 wedge 1 was released in the previous one. But it is again showing you just how thick and how significant these lenses can be. So 37 wedge 1 went through a huge intersection of nearly 70 meters, running almost 10% zinc and 0.5% copper. So I guess the upshot of this is that this part of central Tesla, the sections that we've just stepped through, are significant, not just for the main lens, not just for the copper 2 lens, but for the mid lens, and now for the lower lenses as well. So we're starting to see a lot of upside open up in this part of Tesla. Righto, so we're going to zoom back out and have a look now at Bridge and McIlvenna Bay. We'll swing around to a section view, and the two main holes that we're going to be looking at here are BZ2501 wedge 1. Now this one went through and hit the bridge zone, as you can see there. I'll just circle that intersection for everyone to see. We'll look at that on the geological section on the next slide. But the really significant hole is BZ2502. Now, the reason this one's significant is because the hole went through and hit Tesla. It hit bridge zone, and then it hit McIlvenna Bay. So it's the first hole that we've ever drilled that's really hit all three zones, albeit the bridge zone there is quite skinny. It was about a 3-meter composite intersection there. We'll have a quick look at this with the assays on the geological section here. So BZ2502, like I said, beautiful intersection of Tesla copper lens 2, 21.3 meters at 1.55% copper, a little bit of zinc there as well. Now, if you look at the inset image in the top left of the section, you'll see that the hole trace here, it just hangs off the bottom of what we'd previously modelled as the Tesla footprint. So what this hole actually represented was an extension of Tesla to the southeast. We didn't expect to hit it in this location. I'll show you why in a minute. Like I said, that hole went through and hit a skinny part of the bridge, and you can see why. Again, it's up against the fault there, the Cozy fault, right where that fault block kind of squeezes out. But then it did go on to make a really nice lower intersection of the McIlvenna Bay mineralisation there, which lines up beautifully with what we'd previously hit in BZ2501. Now, interestingly, the upper hole, BZ2501 wedge 1, didn't hit McIlvenna Bay. So anyway, lots of interesting stuff coming together from that one particular hole, 2502. We're not going to be going back to really infill McIlvenna Bay much more than this at these depths. It wasn't, again, the focus, but now that we've confirmed that upside, that's something to come back to later. Now, as I mentioned, the copper lens 2 has now been expanded off the back of the BZ2502 intersection. The expansion potential in general of Tesla to the southeast was previously thought to be limited by the McIlvenna Bay drilling, and that's what I'm showing here, is that we figured that at some point in, not too long, we would bang into the holes that had been drilled for McIlvenna Bay, and that would limit the extension potential of Tesla. However, this intersection was made down dip on the copper 2 lens plate. And when you swing around, you can see that there's actually quite a lot of extension potential remaining, because those McIlvenna Bay holes, they sail straight over the top, right? So there is actually a lot of room that's never been drilled, and those lenses have never been tested in that orientation or in that area. So hopefully we get a chance next winter to come back to this area as well and put a few more holes into here and possibly even get that strike extent of Tesla even longer still. Anyway, swinging back to where we've ended up this season, this is all the assays to date. We do have holes still coming, as I mentioned, and you can see those with the pending assay intervals on there, so there's more fun to come. But that's it from me for now. That was a big update. I hope it's made sense, but thank you very much for listening and wish us luck. Cheers.